Hi, my name is Daniel Shai, and I struggled with chronic fatigue and insomnia for over 3 decades. And in this video, I'm going to be answering the question, should I try to function throughout the day when I feel really fatigued? So let's get into it. So the first thing we want to discuss is what is our relationship with fatigue? And I'll just draw a scenario. Maybe it didn't happen exactly like this for you, but this will give us a more tangible and concrete way to speak about this. So let's say at some point in our lives, there was a night where we slept really bad, and maybe we had something quite important the following day, and we didn't feel so great, right? We felt fatigued. And when I say fatigued, I also mean all the symptoms that come with fatigue, especially the heaviness and maybe a lot of pressure here in the head and fogginess and all kinds of symptoms that can come with it, but an overall sense that it's just really hard to function, to perform throughout the day the way we'd like to. So we developed this relationship with fatigue as something that we want to get rid of and something that we maybe even felt wrong for having, especially if it stayed, if we kept feeling fatigued. So I'm just taking a scenario where we had a bad night's sleep. We felt quite terrible the following day. It was hard to function. It scared us. And then we developed a relationship with fatigue of fear and even of wrongness, which is a kind of guilt, right? And so this is what we can think of as an emotional fatigue or a perceptual fatigue that comes from something that is basically at its root a type of fear and self-criticism. Right? We fear feeling this way. We might be criticizing ourselves for feeling this way, especially after a lot of time has passed and we feel like we should have been done with this by now. We should be feeling better, but it seems to be chronic, and we're just persistent, and we can't function like a normal person. Which is, I put that in quotes because it's just this thing that it is self-criticism to say that to oneself, because it's as though you're not a normal person. You are, and the way you're reacting to the fatigue is absolutely normal. It felt bad. You did not want to feel bad, and so you're wanting this thing to be gone. It's heavy. It's bothersome. It's burdensome. So it's perfectly normal and perfectly understandable, right? Now, here's the thing. As long as we're trying to get rid of this thing, it's actually going to keep it in place. You can think of it as that universal truth that what we resist persists, but it's basically our relationship with it is telling the brain that it's a problem and that it's a danger, essentially that it's a threat. And if the brain picks up on anything as a threat, the alarm systems go off. A lot of the nervous system that's in a state of battle, it's going to be manifested in a symptomatic way, in the way we feel in the body. So here's what we're getting to. The first thing we need to do is to shift our relationship with fatigue. Just like in insomnia, we shift our relationship with wakefulness, with being awake at night. There's a fear of not sleeping. With fatigue, it's more of a fear of not functioning during the day, or there's this pressure to perform, and we don't know if we will be able to meet it, to meet our standards of performance. We tend to then resign and think that resting is what's going to resolve the issue. Now, the thing is, before I really get into how we shift the relationship with sleep, is a note about rest. Because rest is not really rest if it's still filled with, anxiety and stress and pressure. so that even rest doesn't feel restful, rejuvenating, refreshing. And people with chronic fatigue, of course, know that even if you do manage to get 8 hours of sleep consistently, although 8 hours of sleep is a myth, by the way, but we'll discuss that in a separate video, the need for it is a myth. But even if you do manage to get good sleep allegedly every night, the right amount of hours is what I mean by good sleep, and it's consistent, you still wake up feeling unrefreshed. Still the fatigue is there, right? So there is an underlying pressure or anxiety or stress here that is not allowing full relaxation, full rest, and therefore not allowing us to be refreshed. So therefore, that is sort of what we want to focus on here. Not the fatigue itself, or for insomnia, the inability to sleep, but this underlying pressure. Because at the core truth of all of this, we can function, we have an ability to function, just like we absolutely have an ability to sleep, right? And there is an emotional, psychological, perceptual layer here, like I said, of the fear and the self-criticism, the fear and the guilt, really. And just so you know, these emotions are extremely depleting, very draining, and they leak a lot of energy from the system, you could say, right? So how do we shift this? Well, first of all, we begin by, and this is going to be difficult at first. I'm not saying it's easy, but with practice, everything becomes easier. So the first thing we do is we shift our relationship with fatigue by befriending it. So that means when we wake up feeling a certain way, or throughout the day, we keep on repeating this, we welcome the fatigue. Why? Because if we're going to see it as an enemy, that's telling the brain, this is a threat, this is a threat, all systems alert, right? And there is a lot of anxiety and a kind of fight or flight or freeze response here, right? That's not helping us relax. That's not helping us get genuine rest. We want to get to a place that's more easeful. And so the way is going to be through acceptance. And acceptance, we're kind of saying, what is that, right? Because acceptance is a big word, but what is that really? Well, the first thing is befriending and welcoming, inviting the fatigue to be there. And this is going to become easier to do when we add the second step, which is really actively asking ourselves, am I in danger? Is there a real threat? Is there a tiger here? And I mean this seriously, because to the nervous system, it doesn't know the difference between a real threat or a perceived threat. It doesn't know the difference. That's why it's reacting to the fatigue as though it's a real threat. And so we want to ask ourselves, is this a perceived threat? I'm thinking, the nervous system is thinking the fatigue is danger because of that day where we experienced it as something so terrible and was so hard to function, and we registered it as something to fear, right? That's the relationship we're shifting, remember? So we want to, after we befriend it, to really ask ourselves if we're safe. We want to retrain the brain and the nervous system back into safety here regarding fatigue. We don't need all systems go and alert, and then this is all wrong, and then all the self-criticism coming in and all that. We want to just realize it's okay that it's here. It's welcome to be here. And you know what? It's not a real threat. I'm safe. We want to detect the difference between an unpleasant experience and threat. See, unpleasantness is going to be there. It's a part of life, right? But we add to the unpleasantness when we make it a problem, when we make it something to resist, when we try to fix it instead of allow it, it actually feeds it. Trying to fix it feeds it. What you resist persists, right? So we want to allow the fatigue to the best of our ability by befriending it and then really asking ourselves, is this a real threat or am I safe? And once we start associating, oh, the fatigue is here, that's okay and I'm safe, gradually, as we keep on practicing this, the pressure drops. Sometimes in moments when you do this, you'll feel an immediate relief. It doesn't mean that it solves it right there and then, but it can be like, oh, wow, there really is no danger. But the process is not complete until the final step, and this is where we're really answering the question of this video: should I try to function throughout the day? And that last step is to not dwell on the fatigue, because dwelling tells the brain this is a problem. We can't move on until we fix it. We want to train the brain to see that it's not a problem, and we can still have a productive and meaningful day regardless. See, so what we're doing here is not dwelling, we're redirecting. So redirecting means shift your focus to something else. Ideally something that gets you more in the flow, something that you enjoy. You see, when we do get into something that we're into, and we start, let's say, talking to someone about something we like, just for an example, we tend to, the fatigue goes into the background, right? And we're having maybe a meaningful conversation, or maybe we're being productive. What we're essentially doing here, and here's the trick, is instead of obsessing about what we don't want, which is the fatigue, obsessing about having that go away, we are focusing on what we do want, which is, say, a productive day. Not productive in a pressuring sense, like if I don't get all this done, then I'm worthless. Not that, right? It just, okay, I want to have a day. I don't want to have a day where I just constantly fight fatigue. I want to have a day where I focus on things that I mostly enjoy, or that I feel like I can move ahead with stuff and do what I want to do. So the trick here is basically focus on what you want to experience, not on what you don't want. So summarizing, the steps are, and of course you can change the wording of this to make it work for you the best that you think it will. And the wording, and so the steps overall though are befriending and welcoming or inviting the fatigue. Seeing that it isn't a real threat. There's no actual danger. It's just unpleasantness. It's not going to actually harm you. Third, don't dwell, redirect, which is really meaning move on. Move on with your day. And then you can add one more step, which is if the fatigue returns, and it likely will, pause again and say, okay, I've fought the fatigue for however long I've been doing it. In my case, it was decades. Now I realize that one thing I haven't tried perhaps is changing my relationship with it, right? So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to do this process again. And it's easier to move on with your day and to function when you really are doing these two steps first, right? Befriending and realizing it's not a danger, right? Then you move on, you shift the focus to what do I want to experience, not what I don't want to experience. You focus on that, you focus on moving forward, and then you repeat, right? And the recovery of this isn't necessarily linear. Just like with insomnia, there can be what we call speed bumps, where we're getting better, where, you know, in insomnia would be we're sleeping better, but then there's a speed bump where it seems that we're regressing. Same thing with the fatigue recovery. It can seem like, oh, you know what? This is starting to, the symptoms are loosening. There's more ease in the system, and relaxing is more easy. Like rest is actually more restful. But then there's like a setback, right? So we call it a speed back instead of a setback or a regression, because it isn't that. It's something that you can expect. It's something absolutely normal. And it's really just showing us where we're still holding on to some kind of pressure or resistance, because at the end of the day, this is an inner journey and it goes deep. You see, when we're talking about the inner criticism that's happening, the guilt aspect of it, if I shouldn't be feeling this way, why am I feeling this way? And then, of course, so much of the emotional fatigue is the discouragement. I I've tried so many things, and I'm so fed up with this, and I'm so discouraged. Nothing I do works, which is exhausting in itself. It's a state of exhaustion to feel so discouraged, right? And so what we're saying is that it goes deep to a place of really becoming more aware and realizing, oh, wow, I really am not kind to myself sometimes when I tell myself I should be more ahead of where I am, or when I tell myself that I should have known better before. Whatever it is that is a kind of self-criticism. Why am I still experiencing this? I shouldn't be experiencing this. And we want to shift that into self-kindness, into a different way of speaking to ourselves, where we understand that, look, if I could have done differently before, I would have, but I didn't know any differently before, so I couldn't have. I always do my best, right? A little bit of self-forgiveness there, right? Because and again, speaking as someone who's fought and done the same thing day in, day out for decades, until it occurred to me that the relationship with fatigue is something that could be changed at all. It's something that maybe I thought could be changed with other things, but I never thought that really it's possible to relate to fatigue differently in such a way that it actually gradually stops bothering me. I thought that just didn't occur to me until I was shown. Right? So there's no need to beat ourselves up for it. Like I said, I've been in this for decades, and changing the relationship in the way I spoke about in this video, this is what really started to shift it, and it gave me that confidence that, wow, I can function, I can have meaningful days. The fatigue doesn't have to really stop that. I just have to stop and address it in the way that I spoke about in this video, and that's really it. That shifts the relationship. All right. Again, we can't control what arises, but where our control seems to be is how we respond to what arises. So we can shift our attitude towards what arises, in this case, the fatigue. I really, really hope that helps you. If you wish to connect, there are details below. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I'll do my best to answer, and I'm rooting for you. See you in the next one.